there guys, and welcome to another Factorio base tour. I'm Xterminator, and thank you for joining me. And today we are covering a 5,000 science pack per minute base by Rebecca. And this is this base is unique in the fact that the biter settings and resource settings were not tweaked to make things easier. A lot of mega bases will have, people who do mega bases, they'll like pump the resources way up to almost like infinite level, and they'll turn off biters or really lower biters, and that doesn't make the bases any less significant. But that is kind of a general thing that people do. In this base does not have that. This map. So as you can see, resources are pretty normal. Out this far, we're looking at 20, 30 mil. Some are even far significantly less than that. And you can see the enemies, you can see where all the artillery shots have gone, but kind of getting an idea of what the enemies look like here and how much had to be cleared outside this pollution. Now, expansion may be off, or it's possible artillery's keeping it at bay. It's a little hard to tell, and I don't recall a command to check at the moment, but you can just see the size of this. I mean, it's ridiculous. If we look at the turret range, artillery turrets aren't actually here. At the moment, artillery trains, but it's pretty simple outposts here, kind of like Dragon Teeth here. It's not actually Dragon Teeth, but it's pretty much the same concept, which is nice. It slows the biters down so they can be killed easier by the lasers. And then, their train pulls in here. It's not that big of an artillery train, but big enough. And then this is ridiculous. So this is solar. There's some more solar up here, which actually is a pretty interesting kind of stamp here. I like that there's like paths in the middle to run by. Makes it navigating through there way easier. And yeah, so then solar panels. We have solar panels going all the way down. And this is probably one of the longest rails, continuous rails I've ever seen. There are, I think, longer, but this has got to be one of the top. This thing goes all the way. Not there yet. Nope, not yet. Not yet. Not yet. This thing goes all the way down here. And ends here, and all this solar goes all the way down. So basically what they've done is just gone in one direction for the resource, which is smart. And you can see out here, this is 11,000 oil, even though it's only a few wells. These are reaching well over 100, 150 million on each patch, which is far better than what we were seeing back at the base. You can see some stuff is marked. And then there's just outposts that just sprout off the sides here, as well as some artillery things. I mean, like, you look at these enemies. That's crazy for a mega base. And then basically what's happening here is it seems they've put efficiency modules in quite a few, if not all, the outposts, and to reduce power, which is interesting. It's certainly viable. I personally never do this because I don't find it worth the time making all those modules. But if you don't want to deal with just massive power consumption, this is definitely good. And I mean, it already is large power consumption. This uses about 35.5 gigawatts, sorry, of power. Part of that is the accumulators charging, but a large amount is the beacons, and then 4,000 assemblers, 2.5K furnaces, and almost 4,000 roboports. And they're doing all the smelting on site at the mines, which is really smart, especially for this long of a train drive, because ore stacks half as much as plate. So transporting more by putting plate in the train over such a long distance is much smarter than transporting the ore all the way back, since it will only be half as much if you do ore. But this comes back. There's outposts kind of just everywhere, and it comes back, and the drop-offs are here. So it drops off here for iron, and then over to the right for copper, and is picked up by different trains for use within the base. Now, this is interesting, the trains that are being used here. It's actually like a 1-4-2-4-1. And I believe we saw this in our last base tour, where it's like, it would seem like two trains, but they're actually connected together, which is pretty cool. I think this is an interesting concept. Now, the locomotives aren't pointed the other direction, so this is like a pull-through system. But overall, this is really cool. This is using not that many bots. It looks like there's a little bit of charging issues maybe, but that's kind of to be expected with this much stuff being transferred. So this is kind of the transfer area. There's steel here. And then this is a starter base, which has kind of been turned into a make everything. So it's a very standard bus. It is still being fed, of course. But you know, there's smelters here. Pretty. Okay, so this is interesting. I haven't quite seen this type of steel setup before. So they're taking iron plate and then feeding it into steel here, side loading. You can see. Personally, I never do that. I just do ore to plate and then the steel, like right in the same like chain of direct insertion. But this is definitely viable, and it seems to be working quite well. Tons of steel, and then you know, copper, iron. The bus comes down. I really like these circuit lanes right here in the steel. Looks really nice. And then we have a module build down at the end here, which is, I get, you know, producing all the modules for all their needs. So this is basically just to make everything. We have a bit of a train yard up here. Here's some FARL stuff that's being used. There's no FARL locomotive because I didn't have FARL enabled, but here's artillery train, as you can see. This would be quite slow, I believe, because there's only one locomotive on each end, and the artillery wagons are quite heavy, but that definitely is fine. You know, it's not a huge rush. Some uranium processing, oil. There is nuclear right here. Now, most of the power is coming from over 500,000 solar panels and almost 500,000 accumulators, and only a little bit of nuclear power. But it is there. So let's look at the actual Megabase part. Everything's marked. So we have a red circuit build here, pretty straightforward. This reminds me a lot of the red circuit build I did in Sending Supporters to Space. Just the general concept of it. So what they've actually done, which is pretty interesting, is to make this build even bigger, is they've done like one row of production and then put roboports behind that for another 2 rows, or 3 rows rather. So this is kind of an interesting concept to just make things even bigger. And red circuits are slow enough to where this won't cause much of an issue with bots. And they're also using tapering. You can see here on this last row it's tapered in, which helps with bot travel and stuff too. So there are 4 of these ridiculous monsters right here. And then green circuits here, same concept pretty much, minus the tapering, but it's only 3 rows instead of 4 rows. And it's also a different beacon design. This is, I believe, yeah, this is a 12 beacon design, whereas the red circuits were an 8 beacon design. Which makes sense. You know, you can do green circuits pretty nicely with 12 beacons. But, you know, sharing, you know, boxes here, just passing it through the box for the cable. These are probably capped. And then same deal. It looks like all the trains are like this, where it's kind of just like 2 locos in the middle and then 1 on each end, which is pretty interesting. But 8 wagons worth of circuits, which is quite significant. And there is a total of, looks like 6 working builds for this. It looks like maybe 2 more planned here at some point. And then blue circuits here, very standard, 12 beaconed. You know, blue circuits are like super simple to make. So very, very straightforward build. Again, roboports kind of after the first row, which is something I had not considered, but I'm actually really liking that. And okay, I was double checking, this is not 12 beacon. And it's not because the cable's here being direct inserted, so you can't get those extra beacons. And then oil is over here. So 12 beacon, fairly standard builds here, just tons and tons of it. Plastic, like crazy, being consumed and created here. Solid fuel over here. And of course with 17, you need a ton of solid fuel because the blue science actually requires it directly, instead of just needing it for rockets. So you actually need a very significant amount. And this is interesting. They're actually doing coal liquefaction, which I very, very rarely see. It's kind of an... I'm a bit curious on the choice for this. Maybe just for something different, or crude oil was lacking. This is pretty... I haven't seen, like... I haven't seen any Megabase do this. I haven't seen any base period do this in quite a while. So that's pretty interesting. Some lube production up here right next to engines, which is smart. The layout of this base seems very well thought out, in the fact where things are kind of just close to where they need to be to each other. So it doesn't, you know, except for the outpost, of course. So it doesn't make for just like unneeded, ridiculously long trips for no reason. So electric engines here, normal engines are being brought in, and those are made just above it here. These are some very interesting intersections that we have going on here. Okay, so this is a right-hand drive system with some, kind of, with some interesting like side lane. Okay, this is within like the own build. So this is, okay, so this is like a specific turnoff for this build that kind of wraps around. That's pretty cool, actually. That's a really cool way of doing it. And then we have, of course, military products here, grenades, and then piercing ammo over here, which again you need quite a bit of at this point. And then the rocket silos, where I'm at, we'll look at those a little bit later. Let's see. Belt production over here for green science. Let's continue looking this way. Rail, massive rail production. I can see why. I mean, that train track was ridiculously long. And then electric furnaces being made here. And rocket fuel up here. Tons and tons of rocket fuel. All this is like 12 beacon. Makes sense. Roboports in the middle here. With solid fuel being brought in with a bit of a waiting area. And then over here we got rocket control units, same type of deal. And then over here, low density structures. And it looks like there are some wire conditions actually. Probably just to like limit the output and stuff here. Makes sense. And then we have science builds. So let's start with red and green. Over here we have red. Again, 12 beacon, tons of it working. And this is actually all backed up, I believe. Yeah. So if we look at production, we're not actually making near 5,000 a minute, and that's because there's massive buffers. However, if we look at the consumption, it is close to 5,000 a minute. It was when I looked earlier. But if we look at consumption like over the last hour, it's a little lower. But I mean, I can tell based on looking at this, that this is a 5,000 science pack per minute base. And I think there's just massive buffers involved here that have built up over time. So that's the red science. Green science is below it. So we have inserters and belts being brought in. This is an absurd amount of belt and inserters with these 8 wagon trains. That's ridiculous. And I don't even think they're capped. And then, so that's that build. Pretty straightforward. Just outputting here with the provider chest being shared, which is smart. Limits inserters, reduces them. Military science, pretty much same principles. Everything's just being trained in, which is, definitely a good way to go there. Wall production, just a whole like section here for wall, makes sense. And then we have purple science. Where's blue science? I lost it. Let me turn out these labels so I can see the. Here we go. Blue science. So blue science has everything being brought in. And then we have the outputs actually off to the side here on some of these, which is interesting rather than back here. But this is probably, again, it's better for bot travel because it's a bit closer than outputting it back there. And then moving over to purple science, we got the products being brought in here. I'm actually curious where is this module build? Productivity load. These are all marked, so I should be able to find it. And are they pulling from here? I don't think so. I don't think that would be enough modules, would it? Oh, here we go. Looking right over it. So here's a productivity module build. This thing is this can consume circuits, I imagine, like crazy. So there's your productivity module build. And then high-tech science is here. Everything's being brought in. Again, nothing made on site on this one. And the robo frames are right up here with the batteries. Again, very well thought out layouts with things that are needed being close to their consumers. So batteries right here. Sulfuric acid being trained in since it is ways away from the oil here. And then robo frames are made here. That is so many robo frames. They're just a really long craft time. And then we have rockets, of course, near me, or her, but the character I've hijacked. And we have a bajillion rocket silos here. There's actually 12 silos, which is way overkill for 5,000 a minute, but I mean, why not? You know? So, they, you know, it's launched over 2,500, 2,644 rockets, which in 100 hours is not that bad, you know, because this thing probably has actually only been running for really not that long, I wouldn't imagine. And everything for the satellites seems to be being brought in here. And then we have a little 111 train for space science. But yeah, the satellites are just made here on site, which makes sense. And then also I'm curious because satellites take solar panels and stuff. Let me see here. Do we have... Okay, so the solars and stuff dropped off up there. Trying to figure out where... Wait, why is there no station for... Oh, I'm looking at the wrong thing. Where do these come from? So it came from, like... Trying to find these solar builds, because there had to be a ton of solar panels being made. Didn't I just look at that earlier, actually? Here's speed module 1s. Tons and tons of speed module 1s. Holy cow. That is so many. I feel like I'm totally missing something here. Oh, they're right there. I'm so dumb. They're right where I was standing. Oh my goodness. Yeah, where are they? I'm trying to find them. Yeah, they're right here. So that's actually smart, rather than having to train those in. So these are actually being offloaded, had I paid attention, you know, to fund the massive solar farms. And then lastly, the labs here. Tons and tons of labs. Productivity, which is obviously the best method here. And then 12 beacon on these guys, or actually, yeah, 12 beacon, because there's only 2 modules in them, so 14 sources total. I like the use of substations throughout the base rather than medium power poles everywhere. But yeah, all the labs are here. It looks like we are missing red science on some of them, which is why our consumption is not that high. The trains are colored, which I really like. Red science, I'm actually curious why... Maybe the train is running behind, because when we looked here, red science had a gigantic buffer of packs. There's 110,000 in here. I think it's actually short on trains, or the train isn't fast enough. Okay, so there's only one train, would be why, probably. There seems to maybe be a bit of a discrepancy between when the train leaves, how long it takes to get back, fill, and then come back here. That stuff kind of runs out of packs here and there. So that was probably why we weren't seeing 5K on the consumption, because it was maybe missing red or some other pack. But overall, this is a really cool base. I'm always interested in these mega bases. I like that they didn't just go easy mode with the resources and biters. I cannot imagine clearing all these enemies. Even with expansion off, you obviously had to clear it everywhere you're going to build. So many nukes, I would imagine. I'm actually interested. Let me see if we can find 1.3 thousand. Yeah, 1,000 nukes made so far. And I would imagine that most of those are probably used. In fact, I'm a little surprised they're not actually higher than that. Because this is just so many biters, it's ridiculous. I'm also curious. 15,000 artillery shells. And I don't think this shows consumption. Maybe it does. It should, actually. Yeah, so 14 out of the 15,000 have been used. So 14,000 artillery shells so far consumed all time, which is ridiculous. And here's the all-time stats for this stuff. Like I said, 100 hours isn't that much, so these stats are actually pretty dang good considering the amount of time spent here. But here's the current production. Like I said, there's big buffers, so that's why things aren't like really cranking at the moment. But overall, really cool base. This train line is absolutely crazy. I've almost never seen anything quite like that before. But it's a smart move, just going in one direction. To-do list, solve biters. Expansion, more power. I like they have a to-do list here too. That helps. I should be doing that probably. But I think that's going to do it, guys. Anyway, so there's the base. Really cool. I always enjoy these bases. Feel free to submit yours if you have something that you think is cool, unique, different, anything like that. And yeah, thank you for the submission, Rebecca. It was really awesome to look at. I hope you guys enjoyed. And until next time, I look forward to seeing you all, and do take care.